Real estate values go up forever, right? That's what we're here to talk about today. And I have a special guest yet again, Dennis Walsh. First, I'm going to say who I am. I'm Christian Walsh, and we are related. Dennis is my father. So, Christian Walsh with Wire Associates. We have been helping buyers and sellers make the best data driven decisions in this crazy market. And we've got who my kids call Papa Den. Uh, Dennis Walsh, who's a real estate educator, builder, thinker, doer. How else can I introduce you there, Papa Den? What
Well, I've
else?
been around a long time. I've tried lots of different things. We'll
Yeah.
say that, but mostly around construction, building, real estate, music, of course. Got the guitars back there. Hey, question: how many times do I have to appear before I'm not a special guest anymore?
That's a good question. Well, we were talking before, and I was saying I'm glad to have you on my show, and then I'm thinking, well, wait a minute, this is our show. I've had you on so many times that this is our show. We're gonna have to give it a name because actually got some great ideas. We were talking late last night. We've got some great ideas about content coming. All-nighters here. Thanks for coming out, all-nighter. Appreciate that. So this is an exciting topic. We're talking about real estate values going up forever. It's funny when you say that, it's people get angry. And have you noticed that? Like if you suggest that real estate values can go up forever, people are on one side of it or the other, and it's divisive. Like nobody's in the middle on it. So
yeah, there's and especially in the last few decades, even in the last decade here, there's a sense of entitlement. And one of the things that really shocked me, I'm going to guess this was about 10 years ago, right around the corner from you there in that property on Irvine, right next to the 73. Mm-hmm. There were lots of new homes, all different level price homes. And up at the top, they were building some really, really large multi-million-dollar properties. And so folks were buying their homes and moving in. And what they got used to is each phase seeing the price of the same home that they had purchased go up substantially in value. And at one point it was 10,000, maybe 20,000, and that's pretty exciting as a homeowner.
Well, here, let me interject in your story so people understand. So the new construction, builders intentionally phase the construction. Yeah. So let's say there's going to be 100 homes. They come out in batches of 3 to 5. And it's because you got to sell them as you go as the builder. That's part of how they draw down on the loan. But it also allows the value to go up between the phases, theoretically, or continue with the story. Sorry.
Yeah. And so, and you're on the money, because that's something I've taught for many, many years in our new homes training, as we teach realtors, we teach builders, developers, and so on, to bake in some sort of a planned increase like that. And part of the strategy, of course, to make it more desirable in the beginning, there's literally developments where the pricing will be below cost or at cost, and then it climbs. Now, keep in mind that over time, material costs, labor costs can increase, right, depending on the life of the project. But you're absolutely on the money. They're going to plan this so that the homeowners who bought in early are excited. They're telling friends and other people, you've got to get in here soon. Look at how much money we've made. But it's got to the point where instead of feeling fortunate and, wow, did we make a good decision, there's a sense of entitlement. And in that development, at one point, the builder opened up some new phases and didn't substantially. There was a slight increase, but there was really no reason. The developer made decisions based on supply and demand and costs and so on, and profits. The homeowners were so upset, they literally filed a lawsuit against the builder, indicating the builder was not increasing the prices, raising the prices enough, because they deserved an appreciation on their home.
Yeah, and that's a perfect example where people feel entitled to the value of their home going up. So we're going to I want to give some specific concrete examples of what can happen to real estate values over time. But another quick thing, we're already getting some good comments here. I can't wait to bring in some of the comments that All Nighter is mentioning. But another question, and it's a bigger question, we're not going to dive too deeply into it, but I'd like to get some feedback out there, is should a home be considered an investment? Should it go up in value? Should you expect it to go up in value? Does it need to go up in value? And that's specifically the home you're living in, not an investment property. So what are your quick thoughts on that there?
Well, here's what I think. Based on what we're going to discuss here, I think we go a little bit further through our discussion together and maybe come back to that at the end of the
Okay.
discussion, if you will, because as you know, to kind of dig into that and give it full perspective, there's lots of parts and pieces and considerations.
So I'm going to bring in what All Nighter said here. People really need to consider the other half of the transaction, which is the dollar. The dollar does lose value. And the symptom of that is rising prices and not evenly rising prices. So
On the money.
that's, yeah, All Nighter's on it. And we're going to show some specific examples. A little bit of housekeeping. So we have Michelle helping us out, my operations director. She's in the background. She's going to make sure that if we disappear all of a sudden, she's going to come on and do a song and dance. Actually, probably not. She would not do that. But she'll be helping with the comments. So please leave your comments below on whatever channel you're watching. Michelle just private chatted. She said, nope, no song and dance for Michelle. so definitely put your comments in there. And then remember, this isn't tax or legal advice. And we want to hear from you. We want this to be interactive. So trust us, we can definitely get talking, and you can prevent us from doing anything. So here, I'm going to start to share some tabs here. So this is one you sent me, Papa Den. This is the U.S. Housing Price Index since 1900.
Isn't that a beautiful chart, though? Boy, they got carried away with kind of the graphic detail to the point where it's almost difficult to see the.
They're trying to hide it. No, it's so here's one thing I wish they had on there, because you can get it on some other charts, right, and we'll make sure we find a source for it. But when they put in the recessions, that's handy to see as well, because you can see actually these little dips, or not dips, but the kind of the humps here, those were recessions. So values really actually don't go down in a recession typically. And then we see here, you could see the values dropped in global financial crisis. And that was atypical. Typically values continued to go up, right, even during tough times, but that was because they were given loans to people who they should not have been given loans to. So it's a very different case.
I just want to qualify too, and this is to the point that was made by All Nighter. I believe that this chart is adjusted. Is this? Oh, this is appreciation we're talking about. I'm sorry.
Yeah, this is a price index. So I don't know if it's adjusted. It's not adjusted for inflation.
It's not, okay, because there was some of the other charts you have are adjusted. They typically use the year 2000, so that you can see. I think we have an average home value, right? A median home value. Right?
Well, it's funny too, even if you adjusted it to 2000, inflation has gone up so much that you need to readjust that.
Right.
And let me show you this really just graphically beautiful tool. This is from the Bureau of Labor. It's a CPI Inflation Calculator. And I'll make sure we put a link below so you guys can play with this. But this is important, and we're going to bring this in later. This is going to show you, using their CPI data, how things have come, how far as inflation goes. Using an example, let's say you spent, see if I can get it to work.
Yeah, All Nighter made a comment. That's another trick to cause confusion: nominal and adjusted, and you've got median and average, right?
Yeah.
So you've got those kinds of things to take a close look as you're trying to find meaning in these numbers.
Yeah. So here, just a quick example, and we'll dive in and show more specific. We'll show what All Nighter is talking about. Another trick called confusion: nominal and adjusted. Exactly. Seasonally adjusted statistics, things like that. So if you spent 100,000 in January of 2000, that is equivalent to 181,000 right now. That's an eye opener for home values right there. So let's go ahead. I'm going to start to show some specific examples of homes. We're going to start with Grandma's house.
Okay.
So this is in Chardon, Ohio. So we're using Chardon, Ohio for values. Chardon isn't just a randomly chosen place. Chardon is where we're from originally. It's where when you were born, I was born. We made the transition to California. It was a good thing we did that for many reasons. Yes, but this is the condo that Grandma had. Okay. And because and we won't be able to get into it. There was another home that you actually built for them on Allen Boulevard,
Right, right.
and we won't go into that whole story. But they sold that, and we got grandma into this condo. Now they're attached condos, so the data gets a little uh, conflicted, a little
Remember,
roped in.
this was detached. This was,
Oh, was it detached?
yeah, some of them were attached. This happened to be a detached, like a single family, but it was sold as a condo property and
So
maintained and so on.
okay, so grandma bought it when it was brand new, if I remember correctly. They basically just finished this in Chardon. She paid $245,000 to $89 a square foot. Wow, that's low. How do you even build it for
Right, right.
that? I mean,
Well, back then, I remember, I knew a builder in the area who simply priced homes out at $80 or $85 a square foot and went to work. They went out of business eventually.
yeah,
You need to really bid the jobs and know your costs, but
you
yeah.
don't have much runway. So then she subsequently sold it in 2014. She sold it, which is hard to believe it was already 2014.
Right.
It's that long since then. She sold it for 189 at that point in
Doesn't
time.
that blow your mind?
Yeah, so there's a lot of extra data here that got conflicted. They basically took two parcel numbers and put them together on this.
Yeah.
So, but grandma sold it for 189. So that is a loss of what? $56,000. So she owned it for 14 years and lost over $50,000
Right, right.
in that investment. And 2014, for the record, we were actually coming out of the global financial crisis. 2012 is when the market turned. So this wasn't even a bad time to be selling, theoretically,
Correct.
the condo.
Yeah, it was actually 2008 when Wall Street kind of melted down.
Yeah.
And
2012 spring is when the market turned.
well, the thing that's interesting too, and of course, living through those times as you and I both did in business, that stuff happens. And then a few years later, economists are saying, well, the recession's over. We're coming back out of the recession.
Yeah.
And most of us are saying, well, how about showing us a sign? Because we don't see it here on the street. We don't see it in real estate. We don't see it in buyers and customers. So, but this was well into what was considered.
So now we've seen values have gone up, and we can see now the Zestimate for it is 341. So I'm curious. So grandma paid 245. We'll go back to our CPI calculator. So let's see how much better she did. 445. So you guys can see that, right? Yeah. Okay, good. So here's what I did. I took the purchase price that grandma had, the 245 that she spent on this condo in 2000. And now we've adjusted it for inflation today. And that is the same buying power as 445,000. That condo, according to Zillow, is worth $340,000. So it's actually, if you adjust for inflation, has lost $100,000 in value today. Does that make
Based
sense?
on the awareness I have, and I think you have still a little bit of that market, I really think that Zillow number is a stretch too.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I think you'd be hard pressed to get that. So and we don't need to belabor this, although I do want to show Ferris Avenue real fast.
Oh, are
Uh,
you going to show the house on the lake or no?
oh yeah, I got the house on the lake
Oh,
too. We're
okay.
gonna show that too, just for fun. So
Yeah.
this is the house that I lived with my mom in for a while, and this is in downtown Chardon. If there is a downtown, there's a square. It's a beautiful spot. Reminds you of Back to the Future and the clock tower. You
Yeah.
can look it up. So they didn't have the complete data set. So I asked my mom what she paid for it. So in 1990, approximately, she
Mhm.
paid $57,000 for this home, which is it's mind-boggling to me just how low those numbers are. But that still was, I mean, the house needed work. I remember with my buddies, we had to dig out the foundation because the basement was leaking. So we dug out the foundation together and resealed it and all that. So subsequently, she sold it in 1994 for 80,500. That's how much she sold it for and moved into another home. Then you look at the history. So then it sold, according to this, in 2014, around same year grandma was selling her condo. It sold for 57,000. So the same price that my mom bought it in 1990, that's what it sold for in 2014. It's now worth, according to Zillow, $135,000.
Hmm.
So I won't even plug it into the calculator for inflation. You don't have to adjust that to know that if you adjust it for inflation, it hasn't definitely kept up.
Right.
So point being, real estate, while it can go up, you
Sure.
better be sure that you're buying real estate in the right place.
Yeah, it's
So
really low. It's location again. It's always, the old adage, location, location. And that's a factor. But, we can talk at some point here, we can talk about some of the dynamic factors, but I know
yeah,
you want to go ahead and show the next property just for
a
the.
couple more properties to show.
Okay,
So
good.
this is what I did is I dug up a property that sold around the same time grandma bought the condo.
You didn't literally dig this.
Yeah, yeah. So grandma bought the condo for 245.
Okay.
This condo in Corona Del Mar was 333. So in all fairness, she would have had to cough up about another $80,000. But maybe the family could have scraped it together. If we would have said, "Grandma, you're moving to California," in 2000, it would have been a great thing. Um, Long story short, it would be worth 1.4 conservatively today.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that definitely outpaces inflation,
Right.
shows you the power of real estate in the right place,
Right.
and use that as a segue there, Papa Dan, if you want to talk about some of the things. As a builder, I wasn't even showing this. This condo is in Corona Del Mar. I'll show you real fast.
Okay.
This is the one. So had we convinced grandma to go west, she would have been doing a little better when it came time
Yeah.
to sell. So
Yeah, and I remember a number of years back talking to a woman who was retiring as a pharmacist, and how in Huntington Beach she had inherited a property from her mother that she felt was worth about 500,000 at the time. She put some money into it, so she made an investment, 150,000, really fixed it up nicely. And then a few years later, what helped spur her desire to retire was somebody knocking at the door and ended up purchasing the home for over 2 million. Um,
yeah,
so, so her next move, of course, she took that money and invested it so she could get a return on it, renting a beautiful condo. So she's got the financial security and the California lifestyle, and very, very happy with the services and so on. So a great solution there. But look, we've watched this area of the country, and as you know, Tree and I have traveled the nation, seen markets large and small. In most cases, even areas you wouldn't expect it, we've seen substantial over time, a substantial appreciation for people. What is the national, is it over the last, I think over the last 30 years, what is it an average to date of about 4% per year? Is it
yeah, roughly. That's the problem when you go with national data is you
right?
got spots like Chardon
Right.
corrupting
And
those
that
numbers.
4%, by the way, is supposed to have some averaging for inflation. So that, relative to the dollar. So looking at that, there's always the discussion, should I invest in stocks? Should I invest in Wall Street? Should I invest in real estate? And like anything else, it depends, right? It depends on the investment where you're investing it. Another thought to keep in mind, it's not as if grandma, for example, went out and yeah, somebody, you mean there's not one national market? Shocking, isn't it?
All
Surprising.
nighter. Yeah, it's so funny. Yeah. You
It's
you'd
good.
think that with some of the crash bros out there, that's a good saying I got from All
Should be
Nighter.
a global market now, shouldn't it? Everything's
Yeah, global, universal.
yeah, everything good. But look, grandma, you buy a home, she didn't write a check for that total amount.
Yeah.
So when people are, looking at that investment, they can look at investment against the hard dollars, right? The equity that they put into the home. Some people are able to take that equity, pull equity out, refinance, depending on the time and the interest rates, take that equity and make that work on other properties. So there are tremendous ways, but I think it comes back to the automatic idea that you buy a home and that is suddenly your long-term investment, right?
Yeah.
Your path to financial freedom is simply not guaranteed. And you showed some good examples. What else do you have before we?
Yeah, no, I think that's important. And at the end of the day, you do need somewhere to live, so you can decide whether you want it to be something you own or something you rent. There are advantages to owning if you're in the right marketplace. And I don't know if that's factored in. And maybe that should be one of the factors now that I'm thinking about it now is rent versus own isn't just a financial consideration. There should also be financial consideration for you personally. Like it also depends where you are. There's almost no reason. There's definitely no reason to uh, to own 120 Ferris Avenue. I mean, this $135,000 after this, all these years, that's all this house is worth. And you can rent it out for 1,100. It's just, there's no advantage to this other than, I guess, if you were paying rent to someone else and rent was going up. But
Sure.
you can't look at this. This is almost like a disposable house in some
Yeah.
respects because there's no
Exactly.
long-term investment.
Right.
Um,
Right. And the value there, honestly, it boils down to, as we know, it boils down to really the land. Its location, it's the property. There's very, very little value in the house, even though there's a reproduction cost. Go ahead. Yeah, we'll take a look at this one.
Yeah, and speaking of land, so I thought this would be an interesting one as well to show. So again, in Chardon, another one of the houses we lived in, and this is one that Papa Den built. And this one is a spectacular house. So it's on a lake, but that lake was man-made. Papa Den dug that lake.
I was the man.
Yeah,
You know, it's fun.
yeah,
I told my excavator, hey, do me a favor. Any of the equipment you're not using, instead of taking it back to your yard, would you mind dropping it off here at my property? And I had acquired 13 acres there. There was a freshwater spring. And if you remember, Christian, there was a deep, had been a quarry years ago, right?
yeah. The front
Quarry.
part.
So that was deep. It was holding water. So he dropped all this. So I had these big pans and dozers and some oversized skid steers and dug a lake and moved
Yeah.
trees. And you used to, how many hours you spent out there riding around with us doing that when you were little?
Yeah, and then you built this house, which they're saying is 5,300 square feet. They've since added. There's some bold choices on the interior.
Yeah,
These
they
these
decorated
were not our our finishes. The kitchen's nice, but these are not our finishes.
down the pub.
There's
The pub,
yeah. Where's the pub?
right? Yeah, you were just up a little
Yeah,
high. You were there, but you'll find it. No worries.
yeah. So these there's the pub.
Yeah,
The pub was cool. I like the wood.
we had a bar in there too, but
The and then up in those rafters in the great room, I remember crawling around up there about 40 feet above.
well, remember, I brought Tree out
Yeah,
to hang out with you guys for the day. And where are the boys? And all of a sudden we hear your voices, and you were up in the rafters in that house.
yeah. So look at this barn they added. This
Yeah,
is massive for horses.
yeah, riding
So
arena, beautiful.
yeah, beautiful riding arena. So anyway, another example of, I mean, talk about adding value. You came in, you dug a lake, you split this into two. So your friend at the time took one parcel. This one ended up being six and a
Right.
half acres. So 6.5 acres, 5,300 square feet, a lake, a riding arena now, all of this. You couldn't have done more to add value to this site, and it's worth 870.
Yeah.
Um,
And
that
back in, I don't remember the building costs. It's a long, long time, but I do remember, I believe it was 1990 when, I don't know if you show previous sales, but
It doesn't, yeah, it doesn't should go back far enough on
in
this.
1990, I had an appraisal done, and I can't remember where it went sales wise, but I think I had back then a 500, roughly 550 appraisal value, which was really substantial back then, right? In
Yeah.
this area. But look at this now. I mean, it's unbelievable. You know, what's interesting is the sister of a good friend of ours actually purchased this property. Well,
Oh, that's funny. I didn't realize that.
oh, and another interesting note, because he called me up the one day. Yeah, my sister and her husband are very interested. Love the house. Everybody calls it the castle on the lake out there.
Yeah.
You know, in a country English design style I used. But that home was built with the permanent wood foundation. You
I
remember?
remember. Yeah.
Yeah.
As most people who are watching this, don't really deal with basements. We're big fans of basements. Ohio has basements. But even you are a pioneer for it, the
Okay.
permanent wood foundation.
Yeah, I was doing super insulated homes. I put in geothermal heating systems. This was back in the 80s that I was doing these things. And this particular home was built. I was a pioneer there. I worked with the local building department to get approvals. The American Plywood Association was behind this, the
Yeah, they
American
were.
Wood Preservers Bureau. And it's really an amazing, instead of concrete block, instead of poured concrete, which, as you know, have zero insulation benefits, you have to insulate on top of that. They're also just rigid materials. So as ground freezes and settles, things crack. These were basically 2x6 walls, 12-inch centers, all pressure treated lumber, specifically pressure treated for foundation use, an FDN stamp on them, all gravel backfill to carry moisture away. And then the inside of the home, you can easily insulate and finish it, and they're
Yeah, it
comfortable.
was easy putting
Yeah.
electrical and
So
even plumbing. So real fast before we put this one away. So per square foot, it's $164, and that's for the main structure. That wouldn't include the square footage of the barn with the riding arena, and it may not include this extra large garage that you had there. So $164 per square foot.
now,
So
around the corner of us, could you find anything here that's 1,600?
yeah, no, exactly. It's 1,000 a square foot here easily.
And
So
well
could
beyond.
you build that? I mean, could you build that today for 164 a square foot? If you could, that makes the land worth zero.
Yeah, that's the challenge. I mean, that's just supply and demand, right? So
Yeah.
you've got replacement value. As you know, you appraise a property, you've got income value if it applies, you've got replacement value, and then you've just got market value. And that's an example where clearly replacement value has to be substantially greater ultimately than the market value, right? So it's supply and demand and affordability and those factors.
So we're getting close to a hour here, and I don't want people to think that this was a bait and switch of any sort about house values going up.
All right.
I think it's important to have this discussion to understand just how different markets can be, and we saw some great comments about that. All Nighter had some great stuff, and then macro wave investing. Markets can be as specific as street by street.
Absolutely.
That's important to understand and do your best. So there's a part of you they could say, "Hey, I'm in a market like Chardon. Don't pick on Chardon. I'm not picking on Chardon, but
Oh,
like
good place.
if you want to write, if investing in real estate is important to you, and you feel that your home is an investment, which is another if, because you don't have to necessarily feel your home is an investment. Really, what you should do is make sure that you position yourself in the best way possible to live and have a home in a high appreciation market.
Right.
Chardon, Ohio, not a high appreciation market. Nothing against that.
Many markets.
Yeah, many markets, many Midwest markets are not high appreciation markets. So, and that's fine. You live there, have a great life, etc. But don't be sad when your house value doesn't outpace inflation.
Right.
You need to be in high appreciation areas, which are, I mean, one quick way I can tell it would be the cap rate on multifamily. So essentially your higher cash flow markets like Cleveland and Chardon, you need to have a 10% return, 10% cap rate in order to make sense there. Because you're not getting any appreciation. California, low, especially along the coast, it's definitely a lower cap rate environment because you're going to get appreciation over time. So that's in a nutshell. If it's important to you and you feel your home is an investment and should go up in value, you may have to make a move in order for that to happen.
Yeah, let me share just a few thoughts. So more of a macro tied directly to the home or the property itself as an investment. You've got purchasing costs, right? You've got expenses and so on to go through the purchase appraisal. We know that obviously, deal with those costs every day. You've got your interest expense. You've got the money, the hard money, the equity money that you're investing in that property. You've got taxes, insurance, maintenance and improvements, selling costs. And through the process of home ownership, there's other costs that come up. There's surprise expenses. Sometimes just the maintenance and repairs can be a lot of bad news, right?
Yeah.
So all of those things have to be factored in when you look at real estate as an investment. When we look at the impact of location, and what we're talking about is markets, right? The kinds of things that can change. A lot of times there's no prediction on the desirability, but let's just say we've seen areas where big factory is coming in, right? There's markets out there where we talk to we work with agents, as you know, across the nation and beyond. Oh my gosh, we've got all these jobs coming to our area, and this particular big manufacturer or this big technology company is coming in. It's bringing folks in this income level. It's bringing executives. That business is attracting other businesses, and suddenly that location is greater demand. So the cost of land, the desirability, the ability there, suddenly builders who maybe have been in a sleepy little town building can finally raise their prices a little bit and make a little bit more money.
No, a great example of a city like you're talking about, a buddy of mine invested, and we'll have to have him on the show, is Midland, Texas.
Okay.
So Midland, Texas, somebody gave him a hot tip on it, I want to say 5 or 6 years ago. So he started buying houses in Midland, Texas. It's an oil town, and it didn't have enough housing because they were all of a sudden they were doing a bunch of fracking, and there were a bunch of wells that were popping up in that area. They didn't have enough housing. Any housing they did have would get rented at high rates. So he was getting great returns, but it also turned into a high appreciation market.
Right.
And it was one where he did the research and knew that because of oil and because of the fact that there weren't that many houses there, et cetera, this was going to be a good investment. And that dovetails with what you're saying.
Yeah, that's a great example. Another one is Nashville. If you followed Nashville over the last 10 years or so, and if you remember, Tree and I were going to Nashville quite a bit with our music, and getting into the music scene there. Yeah. And as I looked around, I saw the desirability, some of the growth going on. I started saying to people, look, you might want to look at that Nashville market. Folks, obviously, folks that we work with who are, big time investors. And several of our friends did. They got in there, started buying up properties. What they've seen over the last even 5 years, and that's continuing. There'll continue to be opportunity.
Yeah.
So you look at those factors, you look at those kinds of dynamics. Sometimes transportation makes a big change. There'll be a location.
Pro tip: traffic engineers tend to know about building projects very early. That's a good tip.
Yeah, and
all-nighter knows.
Building on that, one of the things I like to encourage, if you are really invested in a community or you're looking at a community, you want to get a sense of that and compare. And because you do this, Christian, a lot of real estate agents I know haven't. But you go to those planning commission meetings. You get to know the city, the village engineers. You go to the planning commission meetings to see what's coming. Talk to utility companies. They're often years ahead prepping for the next big area where there's going to be growth and development. So there are signals out there you can look for. You remember the property down in Florida where I was looking for a place for a factory years ago for our panelizing business.
Yeah.
We had one in Chardon.
Yeah. So a panelized business, to explain that. So, you're going to go into one of your stories. We're at a half hour.
I'll tell this.
I'm just giving. No. I'm giving you a hard time, but no, it is a good one. We should talk about it. And by the way, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. I'll be doing the same thing in another 10 years with my stories. But no, the panelized home factory it was modular, panelized construction. Basically, the factory built walls and trusses so that you were able to ship those pieces. And at first you were just doing Northeast Ohio, but then you ended up building stuff in Florida by shipping on trucks all the pieces and parts of a home. And that was in the 80s. Right. So it's funny, like we hear how all these modular ADUs are so...
News today, there's a company that just landed a $52 million investment.
Exactly.
Doing today's version of what I was doing back then.
Yeah. Okay. So you were shipping your stuff to Florida, and what happened?
But relative to I won't get into the whole story on the watermelons. We'll come back to that another time.
Yeah, it's the watermelons.
But I was looking for a location. So we were shipping to Florida. We had a lot of interest from builders down there. So let's put a factory. What a great growing market. And Sarasota, it was the area we were looking. What a fantastic location for up and down the coast and so on with all the growth. So I'm scouting around for property. I find right behind the Sarasota airport 8-acre parcels. They were orange groves. And this one parcel, this one orange grove was for sale. So I started doing research, did exactly what I just told you. I went to the planning commission, talked to the zoning inspectors, I called utility companies, and bit by bit, I pieced together the fact that what was a 2-lane, kind of a broken down, crummy road behind the airport that this property was located on, was going to be widened, paved, and it was going to be turned into, I believe it's Route 301, as a bypass around the back of the airport instead of everything being on the Tamiami Trail. So there we're getting sewers, utilities, a wide paved road. I knew that that property was going to increase in value. So got together some investors. We bought the 8 acres. I believe it was about a 30,000 square foot manufacturing type building we put up there. At the time, things changed in my life. We never put the second factory there, panelizing operation. But that property turned into a tremendous investment because that location hadn't changed, but the value, the accessibility, the services and so on had. And sometimes that's what happens when they'll bring a train line or transportation or, all those, an airport comes into, new airport is built, and then certain properties suddenly have more value than they had before. So.
Yeah, so we did kind of bait and switch everybody with this one, but it was a good bait and switch.
Mm-hmm.
So real estate does, in the long run, go up.
Yes.
But it may not outpace inflation depending on where it is. So, but what we ended up talking about is identifying some keys to identifying areas that will potentially outpace inflation.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a better summary of what you should do for real estate is try to outpace inflation in your real estate acquisition. So you can look backwards, like some of the stories we shared, on places that didn't outpace inflation. So Chardon and where we live did not outpace inflation. So no regrets there. That fish that got away, we're glad. Your story about Florida, that's a good example about one that you could have continued to use and it would have gone up in value, or you could have exchanged into another market where it's a higher appreciation market. So that would be the goal, is so you can look back at the fish that got away. That's helpful. Maybe that helps you find a market. Look around you right now for opportunities like you did in Florida. At that time, you were looking for opportunities. And then look to the future to try and figure out, using some of those tools of talking to the city and looking at where companies are going, looking at even weather patterns to try and figure out where you should invest in the future. So do your best to leverage where you are right now to get you to that place so that you can look back in 30 years and say, wow, that was the best move I ever made. Like we feel about California.
No, absolutely. And what I'd like to suggest is that it's perfectly fine to buy a home and not really care over time. You've got a location, great schools, community you're involved in, the weather, whatever it may be that you like, and that's fine. But there shouldn't be this entitlement, this automatic, I buy a home and this is an investment.
Yeah.
To your point, if you do want to look at a home or other real estate as an investment, it's uncovering more information. Like any investment, the more information you have on what could potentially impact the value of that investment over time. And that's where why you do what you do at such a high level, Christian, because it's not just residential, it's investment properties and commercial properties and all the things that you have your hands in and you keep your eye on, so that you can present a more comprehensive picture of the potential. Nobody's got the look into the future, but those things certainly can help put you on track and give you that competitive edge.
Well, I think that's a good ending because you said something nice about me. Let me say something nice about you.
Okay.
No, and you do the same thing. You've been tracking like your wealth of knowledge. That's why I enjoy getting us together, because we talk. I know I learn, and hopefully the folks tuning in are learning as well. But your perspective and wisdom, it definitely comes through. So thank you for sharing that. So that's it. Thanks for tuning in today. And we will continue to do these lives together. Me and Papa Den will figure out a name for this show. Let us know what you'd like to see, what topics you'd like us to cover. And we'll do our best to tell lots of long stories on whatever.
Yeah, I think we've got some fun ideas for things coming.
We do. We got some exciting stuff coming. And then subscribe to my free weekly email newsletter. And if you're looking to buy or sell real estate, of course, I can help with that as well. And if you're looking for real estate training, Papa Den's got the real estate training, and it's stuff that even if you're not a real estate agent, you would definitely benefit from. So, all right. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Have a great